Welcome back to Picks with Phony Soprano. Here to review the week one picks that I made, as well as go through my picks for week two. As you can see on the screen, didn't do so well in terms of the spread, did a little better in terms of the money line. A lot of close games here or potential, close misses that I had. But overall, week one definitely is the hardest week to pick, I think, because you don't have enough data really to uh, go off of in terms of how you're going to pick things going forward. But now, with week one down, it makes it a little easier. The other thing I will say is through the month of September, just in general, it can be a little harder to pick. Like again, less data, but also due to the contact restrictions that the NFL has in place in terms of padded practices and full contact. Offensive lines, defensive lines kind of don't have enough reps really to kind of be in the full swing of the season, honestly, until closer to October after, the first 4 weeks of the season. So, there's always time. Things can change pretty consistently. But going through the picks, just that I had for the first week. So we know Eagles Cowboys on Thursday night. Eagles won. They certainly didn't cover the 8.5 point spread. Friday we had Chiefs Chargers. Chargers won that outright. I took that upset, so got the spread point there and the money line. Tampa ended up winning as well and covering the 1.5 point spread on Sunday. Continuing on Sunday, the Bengals beat the Browns. It was a really close game. I really, really wanted to pick the Browns actually to cover that game. Just, I think, if you go back to where I was looking, it's a divisional game, week one. Browns have a really good defense. Cincinnati usually struggles out of the gate. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we go into the week two picks. Dolphins, that was the biggest disappointment for sure. I'm sure everyone can agree there. They looked absolutely inept. They didn't look like an NFL team, and they lost to the Colts, who, in everyone's mind, preseason, were going to be in contention for the number one overall pick. So, and they got absolutely trounced. And Daniel Jones looked incredibly, incredibly good. So, we'll see, how these teams shake out down the line. Patriots, really disappointing loss there as a Pats fan. You expect them to come out with a little more fire, but it was just some key mistakes in the game that were made in key situations. Um, and they definitely didn't play as cohesive as a game as really they should have. And it wasn't necessarily that the Raiders went out of their way to do anything crazy, but Patriots honestly lost that game more than the Raiders won it, in my personal opinion. Cardinals. I'll take that. I think personally, the Saints are probably the worst team in the league. So, with that being said, I totally expected the Cardinals to win. They won by 7 points. They barely covered. Again, week ones, you never know how things will shake up, but Cardinals there. Jets did cover. Jets did have a chance to win. When's the last time Aaron Rodgers threw 4 touchdowns in a game? I don't know. That's got to be at least 4 or 5 years ago. So, no picks as well. I mean, he looked great in his return versus his former team, but I think it's kind of a flash in the pan personally. But we'll see how it goes down the line. We'll see what happens this season. Washington and the Giants. Washington won. They won by more than 6.5. I picked the Giants to kind of cover that 6.5 point line. They're the only team to not get in the end zone in week one, of course, when I picked them to cover versus the Commanders week one. Jaguars, Panthers. No surprise that the Jaguars won. I think the Panthers are a good team, young team, up and coming team. I think the Jags are, a year or two ahead of where the Panthers will potentially be or want to be. I think the Jags have a pretty solid team, great coaching overall. I'm really excited to see what else they have going forward this season. Broncos won. Broncos didn't cover. Broncos covered as the survivor pool pick of the week. So you'll see when I have week two, I highlighted them on the home and away side. This way we know we already used them in the survivor pool. 49ers covered, 49ers won. And then we get to the ugliness of the picks that I made. I last second before I made the video switched my pick from Green Bay to Detroit. Detroit looked like they struggled, looked like they were just outmatched, especially earlier on. Packers really took advantage. They had a good game plan. They came in firing on all cylinders, at home. And in order to kind of be the best, you have to beat the best. And I still think the Lions are a great team. Uh, even with the Green Bay loss, Green Bay is still one of the younger teams in the league. Um, but I definitely still have high hopes for the Lions this year. They're absolutely still a playoff team. They're still loaded with talent. Down the line last year, they lost a lot of their defensive talent. Um, but on to Texans and Rams. I think this was kind of not a great game. Stafford, bad back. Um, how well does he play through 17 games? We'll see. I think the Texans really should be on the uprise, and they didn't necessarily look amazing, but kind of a defensive slugfest. Rams won, Rams covered. Bills won, which was my pick, and this one really could have went either way because I think the Ravens are probably slightly more talented on paper. But the Bills at home, incredible game. I think it's one of the best games we'll see all year. I think it's a game that has playoff implications. We could see both of these teams playing in the playoffs, and honestly, this week one win by the Bills could be the difference maker in terms of seeding as we move through the season. Vikings Bears. Bears looked great in the first half and then totally collapsed. Um, Still think the Vikings are a great team. They're very aggressive on defense. They do have some talent all around. Curious to see what they do going forward. I think McCarthy, put it together a little bit in the second half. We'll see how he progresses through the season, and we'll see how the Bears progress because it seems like no matter how much talent they have, um, even though they got the coach they wanted, everything like that, they just can't put it all together and they can't close it out. So I went 6-10 versus the spread, 10-6 straight up. So for week two, as you can see, the Broncos highlighted here in yellow. I already used them for the survivor pick. So we have Washington and the Packers tonight at 8:20. Green Bay, 3.5 point spread. I think this is a pretty simple one for me. I think a lot of people would disagree. Um, Packers, definitely 3.5 point spread. I think they win. I think they cover. I think the Packers are a significantly better team. Washington is actually the oldest roster in the entire NFL, and I think that they lack the overall talent and lack the overall depth to really compete, especially versus the Packers at home. You saw what the Packers did to the Lions. I think the Lions are a better team than Washington as well. With that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if Washington loses by a last second field goal. If that's just how the game shakes out, that's how it shakes out, and that's probably why they have the line at 3.5. But for me, I'm taking the pack both ways. Um, I think the Packers have a legitimate shot to make a legit run this year. I thought that they could have made a run last year. Still a little young. I still think that the window is kind of at the beginning and starting to open. They still have room where they can improve, but I think the Packers win this game. And I think they cover. Pats Dolphins Sunday at 1. Both these teams coming off of not great losses. 0-1 teams. Dolphins looked like they weren't even a football team. The Patriots looked pretty solid in the first half. Patriots, had times where they were over aggressive, especially in situations where they shouldn't have third and long situations, and it cost them because they were over aggressive and they weren't able to get home. Drake May, his mechanics, um, still a little too choppy. Footwork not there. Caused some classic May sprays, as we like to call them here in New England. Um, Interception, not his fault. Got hit as he threw. But otherwise, he hits that in stride and, potential for a touchdown. Um, the game could have shaken out either way last week. Got to give Gino and the Raiders some credit coming in to New England, hostile environment in the rain, and just kind of taking it right to the chin of the Pats. I'm obviously a homer. It's tough, really. The Patriots haven't beat the Dolphins. in Miami since Tom Brady was the quarterback in 2019. So it's definitely hard to pick the Patriots here to go in and win in Miami. One thing that Miami does to their advantage, I know everyone complains about the snow and whatnot in New England and Dolphins traveling up and, these southern teams playing up in the north, and they got to deal with the cold and the snow. The Dolphins, what they do to their advantage is, you want to say cold weather is an advantage. The Dolphins away bench is literally in the sun at 1 o'clock. So it'll certainly be hot in Florida in the middle of September still, South Florida at that. Um, I'm going to take the Patriots to win just because I'm a homer. But and normally I'm going against my gut here. Um, because I still think that the Dolphins are a decent team. I really do. I think that they just really did terrible, really terrible in the first week. And if I'm picking between two bad teams, I normally take the home team. Um, I think that that's a pretty safe bet. But you know, I'm going to take the Pats. I originally had the Dolphins winning this game because I expected the Dolphins to be better preseason. When I was looking at the schedule, I had the Dolphins winning this game in Miami, and I had the Patriots winning in Week 18 in New England in the cold versus the Dolphins. So I thought they'd go 1-1 versus each other. So I could very well see the Dolphins winning. Of course, they're the favorite at home. But I also had the Patriots beating the Raiders. I mean, and until we see either one of these teams take advantage of bad football, put a full game together, I think it's up for grabs for anyone. I think one of these teams is probably going to play significantly better than the other. I think one team will get it together. Um, we'll see on Sunday who it is, but I don't think that it's going to be a close game either way. Either way it shakes out. I think Miami either, wins by a touchdown or so, or the Patriots win by a touchdown or so. I think 1.5 is a little kind of splitting it. So, I'll take the gamble and take the Pats. Give me the extra 1.5, on this side. But anyway, moving on. Jags Bengals. This game's interesting. The Bengals usually start out slow in September. We all know this. They played a good game, okay game last week. They really got shut down on offense by the Browns defense, who's tremendously underrated. I don't think the Browns are as bad as people make them out to be, seriously. But I think the Jags are legit. I mean, with how the Texans looked last week, I think, week one overreaction, we could be talking about the Jags winning the AFC South, uh, this year. Uh, and, the Bengals are definitely a more talented team. They really are. Um, but with that being said, I think the Bengals getting off to a slow start. I think the Bengals having an okay defense, not necessarily great. The Bengals missing a couple key players. I think the Jaguars going to Cincinnati and straight up get the win this weekend. I'm a little higher on the Jaguars than I think most people are. But I think that they have the talent. Um, at the receiver position, we saw what ETN did last week, absolutely gashing the Panthers. And I think the Bengals lack the run defense as well. Granted, they have Demetrius Knight now, their second round linebacker pick out of South Carolina, who's a stud. Um, who- I still think that the Jaguars come out with this win. I mean, they have the offensive talent. They finally have the coaching. We'll see how well Trevor Lawrence plays this season and how they kind of put it all together. But I'm really excited for Jaguars team to finally actually be decent again. And I think that this year they probably win the AFC South. I think that they go into Cincinnati, get the win, and come out 2-0 and kind of surprise people this weekend. I know 3.5 isn't a huge line to really predict an upset at, but I think that they go and get the upset. And I think that'd be fun to see. I think it's going to be a good game regardless. Um, Giants, Cowboys, Dallas 5.5. So obviously the Cowboys aren't as bad as people make them out to be. Giants didn't score a touchdown last week. 5.5 is kind of a big line for an early season divisional game between two divisional teams that probably aren't making the playoffs. With that being said, the way Dallas kind of turned it around, in the second half versus the Eagles last week, the way their offense played, Dallas really should have won that game. I mean, CeeDee Lamb had four drops. He's their number one guy, obviously. So Dallas really could have won that game. I don't think the Eagles necessarily had the best game, especially in the second half. They didn't look great. Um, the Giants have a great pass rush. You know, how well does Dak Prescott adjust to the good pass rush, interior and exterior pass rush? Does he have enough time to get the ball out? And obviously, with Jalen Carter being taken out of the game last week, that's a huge, huge loss for the Eagles in terms of interior pass rush. Um, I've kind of gone back and forth on this one. I think it can go either way. I don't really think that the Giants don't score a touchdown for another week. I think that they score a touchdown this week, which really makes me want to take the Giants at +5.5. But overall, I think the Cowboys versus decent competition last week. Um, I say decent, like literally, they played the team that won the Super Bowl. Granted, they had a lot of losses on the defensive side of the ball. Um, it's a tough one. I'm going to take the Cowboys. I'm going to take the Cowboys to cover and win. Bears, Lions, Detroit -6.5. So the Bears had a great first half champions, hang the banner. Uh, the Lions didn't look great against the Packers. I truly think that they were overmatched. The Bears kind of threw the game away versus the Vikings. Um, I think that everyone's still, because of that loss versus the Packers, I think everyone's sleeping on the Lions. And I think everyone thinks the Bears are chokers, which they probably are. At home, playoff contending team looking for a bounce back week. Definitely a tough one because 6.5 is a lot of points for a divisional game. You're saying that the Lions beat the Bears by a touchdown, when people probably preseason had the Bears, you know, being fairly competitive. I think that that's a lot to ask earlier in the season, but my gut says that the Lions are going to straight up win by at least a touchdown. Um, we'll see. I mean, if the Bears keep it close, they keep it close, and I think that at that point the Lions should be a little more concerned because I think that on paper the Lions are a way more talented team. They have a lot more experience. They're at home after a loss. Dan Campbell's obviously rallying the troops, kind of coming in there and not going to accept anything but perfection in week two, after really getting smoked in week one. Um, Rams Titans. Rams -5.5 in Tennessee. Now, this is a tough one because Cam Ward really played pretty solid last week. Made some good checks at the line, with his protection. Made some good reads. Made some good throws. Eyes are always in the right place. Like he actually impressed me. I saw stuff from Cam Ward that, prior, I wasn't crazy high on him, to be totally honest, but he definitely showed things that you want to see from a starting quarterback in the league. The Rams, certainly a better team. The Titans are have to be one of the worst teams in the league. Um, and they had a couple drops. They just don't have the receivers getting open. Honestly, the Titans, excuse me. I think the Rams have a legitimate pass rush with Braden Fisk and with Jared Verse, of course. Um, man, I think Cam Ward's in for a tough week. I think he's going to be running for his life. I'm taking the Rams to win and to cover. And at that, the Rams will be my survivor pool pick of the week. This originally was my survivor pick, was going to be the 49ers over the Saints because I think that the Saints are actually the worst team in the league. Um, it's just they're just really having a tough time. Maybe not right now. They play decently valiantly against the Cardinals. I'll give them that, but I think the warts are really going to show as the season goes along. I think especially if they lose Kamara, it's going to be really tough sledding. Um, I originally had the 49ers winning this game for sure in New Orleans versus the Saints. And it's tough to take the 49ers here because no Brock Purdy, you got Mac Jones starting. But with that being said, I still am going to take the 49ers to cover. I'm still going to take the 49ers to win. Um, they, like I said, they would have been my survivor pick of the week because I think that they, played the Seahawks tough. I think that they still had a lot to show. They have a couple big injuries early on. No Kittle's huge. McCaffrey being a little banged up. No Purdy. They have some injuries again, which they really struggled with last year, and it really, really hurt them. So I was kind of, in my mind, thinking that they'd have a better season, barring that they don't catch the injury bug, which sucks because it seems like it's continued from last season. But even with that being said, I think that the 49ers win this game. Um, and I think that they cover. Bills, Jets. AFC East matchup. Bills going to East Rutherford to play the Jets. Got the Bills obviously coming off that incredible win versus the Ravens, who have one of the best defenses in the league. Putting up 41 points versus one of the best defenses in the league is absolutely absurd. Then you got the Jets, who also put up 30 plus points against another great defense in the Steelers in the league. The Jets look good, man. They were just in the game the whole time. Every time that, Pittsburgh scored, uh, the Jets would also score. I mean, that was a crazy game for week one, and it's actually insane. I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card that Jets Steelers would be arguably, other than Bills Ravens, which we knew would be the best game of the week. Let's be honest. But other than that, if you had to say Jets Steelers would have been the next one, I don't know about that. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. Um, Bills winning by a touchdown is a lot. But I have total faith in Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Love to see big game from Keon Coleman. He's a little banged up. He should play this weekend. Um, you know, big game, big game from the Bills. Early in the season, I think if they continue to ride the momentum of winning. Jets, of course, having, you know, it was tough loss for them last week. And I think that the Bills are just so much better than the Steelers. I think the Jets really get smacked in the mouth this week. I think the Bills cover and Bills win. I know it's a big spread for a divisional game, especially earlier in the season. I'm just going to take the Bills. You know, stay with the team that I think is winning. I think the Jets are not going to be playing in January. I think the Bills are. So, I'll take that, and I'll take the reigning MVP to, do his thing, score a lot of points. And even if the Jets score 30 again, I mean, the Bills could easily score 40 again. So I think the Jets defense is definitely worse uh, than the Ravens, but we'll see. Should be an exciting game. Hawks, Steelers, Pittsburgh -3.5. Steelers coming off a big win at home last week. Of course, we've been talking about that. Seahawks coming off of the loss versus the 49ers. I don't particularly think that either of these teams are great by any means. I think that they're middle of the road-ish. Your 8-9, 9-8 type of teams. Um, I think the Seahawks will get settled in. I think they'll come into Pittsburgh and play another close game. They were close to the 49ers with all the 49ers talent that they had last week. Granted, injuries to the 49ers, but the Steelers just seem to play in close games. Um, that's what they've done over the last couple of years. They've won a lot of close games. They've lost some close games. Um, but overall, I definitely think the Seahawks cover. Uh, my prediction is probably, unfortunately, an Aaron Rodgers tied, goes down the field, kicks a field goal as time expires. Chris Boswell and Jason Myers, for that matter, absolute boots. Um, that's what I think happens. I think the Steelers win, though, which pains me to say. I'm not a Steelers guy. Plenty of family that are Steelers fans, which is actually interesting enough. But of course, from all those games that we had, playoffs, rivalry stuff, of course, the Pats got the better of them. We don't need to go into history, but always playing against them made them feel like they were part of the AFC East divisional, uh, battle. So can never pick the Steelers, but here we are. All right. Browns Ravens last 1 o'clock game here at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Ravens 11 and a half points. I see why they made this line this egregious. This is a massive, massive line. And again, I don't think the Browns are as bad as people make them out to be. I think that they have a very stout defense at all three levels. I think they have good secondary. You got Denzel Ward, who's top five corner in the league, no matter what people say. He's a top five corner in the league. You got, of course, Myles Garrett, one of the best pass rushers in the league. Mason Graham, new defensive tackle. You spent the fifth overall pick on him. They have a stout defense. I mean, yeah, the Bengals always get off to slow starts, but like Bengals literally looked anemic last week. Joe Burrow less than 200 yards passing. Jamar Chase, two receptions for like 20 yards. I mean, to be able to shut down an offense of that caliber, uh, I know it's a divisional game. They play each other. They know each other pretty well just from playing multiple times in the division, throughout the season, throughout the years, similar scheme, whatever. I think that the Browns cover this game. Definitely. I think 11 and a half is too much for a divisional game. As much as I think that the Ravens are probably the potentially the best team in the league. The Ravens definitely win this game, especially at home. But I think it's going to be a little closer than 11 and a half. I think that double digit win, that's pushing it. Now, Ravens could blow doors. That tends to happen. When you put a playoff team, arguably the best team in the league, versus a non-playoff team, the Browns. I think that the Browns are a little under average as far as the league goes when you talk about, combined football team, offense, defense. But their defense really, really is great, honestly. I think it's totally been undersold, and I'm going to keep hammering that the Browns have one of the better defenses in the league, probably a top 10 defense in the league. Not probably. I'll give it to them. Top 10 defense in the league. All right, four o'clock games. Got Broncos, Colts. Broncos going into Indianapolis to play in the Dome. Denver minus 1.5 at 405. Denver did not look good last week versus the Titans. I mean, we know that the Titans are not exactly a playoff caliber team yet. They still don't, they definitely did not have quite the talent that the Broncos do. Granted, they lost by 8 points. Like that's, a decent sized point margin for a loss. Um, but even still, I think people really expected the Broncos to blow the doors off of the Titans. And I think the Colts are really getting a lot of love because of how they looked versus the Dolphins last week, who just were not a functional football team. They did not look prepared at all. Um, Frankly, it was embarrassing for the Dolphins. I think that's kind of why the line is swayed so much and not in favor of Indianapolis, but in that direction. Um, I'm still not a Bo Nix guy. I think that Denver has arguably the best defense in the league. I think they have a great supporting cast. I think that they're established. I think that they're on the uprise. Even if it is a close game, which I don't think that it'll be that close, and I still don't believe in the Colts. The Colts need to show me more than just week one versus Miami, to really say that they can hang in there with a team that will probably be in the playoffs in Denver. So I'm taking the Broncos to win and cover. Panthers Cardinals 405 in Arizona. Arizona 6.5 point favorite. This will be a good game because the Panthers are a better team than what people think they are. They're a young team on the rise. Cardinals are still also a good team, playing at home. They beat the Saints last week. I mean, this was the line versus the Saints. Like, let's just think about that for a second. This was the same line versus the Saints, and the Cardinals won by 7, so they barely covered. And granted, they were in New Orleans. However, the Panthers definitely cover. I think the Panthers bounce back week. I really think the Jaguars are legit, and I think that they played a tough team in week one. And I think that I really do think that the Panthers cover. They're a young, upcoming team. I think they kind of get their act together week two. And the Cardinals are still good. I think the Cardinals win, but I think the Panthers cover. That should be another good game, to be honest. I mean, we got a lot of good games this weekend. A couple burners, but other than that, quite a few good games. Speaking of another good game, Philly going into Kansas City at 425. Eagles -1.5. I don't think I need to say more than this. I think the Chiefs start the season 0-2. Not that I think that the Eagles looked great in the second half of the game, but I think that they still have a lot to work on. They still are a more talented team than the Chiefs. Yeah, the Chiefs have the sour taste in their mouth, and it's going to be in Kansas City. So I get that. I get it. I think the Eagles' ability on offense to control the pace of play with being able to run and pass as effectively as anyone in the league, um, separates them from a team like the Chiefs, where I don't, I mean, Xavier Worthy's banged up. I don't know if he's playing this weekend. You're still missing Rashee Rice. Kelsey's washed. We all know this. We knew this. Like they're missing. And what do they have? Tyquan Thornton, who was a cut from the Patriots, who can't even make the Patriots wide receiver core. That's who you're counting on to go in and to beat the Eagles, who get Jalen Carter back. Granted, he doesn't spit on anyone this week, but yeah, I'm taking the Eagles to cover. I'm taking the Eagles to win. Even if the Eagles just win by a field goal, yeah, it's going to be a closer game than the Super Bowl, that's for sure. But I still think the Eagles are a better team. I think they know they can get it done. Um, no, it's tough. Chiefs did not look good in week one versus the Chargers. I think that that's more of a credit to the Chargers. I think the Chargers really looked good. Herbert played a great game. Um, and the Chiefs just didn't look great. On to the 8:20 game, Falcons Vikings. Falcons traveling to Minnesota. Minnesota 3.5 point favorite. This is a good game. I mean, granted, it's not the game we wanted to see at 8 o'clock. I think that Eagles Chiefs really should have been flexed to the 8 o'clock slot. I think that's probably a better game, potentially your best game this week. Um, I mean, it's a Super Bowl rematch. Of course, it's the best game this week. Um, just on paper, but either way, Falcons Vikings. I think that this will be a good game. I think both of these teams, of course, is the battle of the quarterbacks from last year's draft, fourth and fifth drafted quarterbacks in last year's draft. Of course, JJ McCarthy riding the high of the second half of last game versus the Falcons. Michael Penix throwing for almost 300 yards versus the Bucks. Um, at home, I think that this will be a close game. I think it'll be a good game. Vikings are very aggressive. I think, without Jordan Addison, it's still tough. But I still think that they're probably overall a better team and just kind of in a better spot than where the Falcons are. Granted, the Falcons have a very talented roster. If Penix continues to play well and puts it together, I think the Falcons could be a team to reckon with at some point during the season, probably second half of this year. I think we might be seeing them go on a run potentially. With that being said, I think the Falcons cover. I think that they only lose by a field goal. But I think that the Vikings win this game at home. You get to start the season 2-0. I think that the Vikings win this game, although, could go either way. It's definitely a good game. Bucks Texans. Houston minus 2.5. Guess the Sharps know something that I don't, but Texans have one of the best defenses in the league, that's for sure. But do they slow down the Bucks offense? That is the question. Bucks only scored 23 last week versus the Falcons in Atlanta, and that was certainly a good game. Bucks played well. Um, tough matchup, tough divisional matchup. I think these are two teams that are, pretty even. Can CJ Stroud have a bounce back week after a bounce back? He needs to bounce back this year for the Texans because he wasn't amazing last year. Granted, they lost Nico Collins for a bit. They lost Stephon Diggs early in the season. No Tank Dell. I think that he has young talent around him, with the Iowa State guys, Higgins and Knoll. You have Nico Collins. We'll see what they can do. I think that they still have a little ways to go before they kind of put it all together. And I think the Bucks are tried and true. I think the Bucks come in and win this one on the road. Um, I don't know why that always gives me trouble. Buccaneers. All right, last game. This is another one that I don't know. I think Vegas knows something I don't because I think that this is egregious. I think the Chargers win this game. I think they win more than 3.5. Um, I don't. I think that the Chargers are in the running to win the AFC West. It's a good division. Yeah, it's a divisional game. Yeah, it's in Vegas. I get that. I hear you. The Raiders winning last week versus the Patriots was more of an indictment on the Patriots than it was a plus for the Raiders. Raiders looked decent. They looked okay. Genty didn't really get going. Max Crosby is Max Crosby. He's good. But the Chargers straight up have more talent. They have an elite quarterback. Granted, Geno slung the ball around the yard. That's what Geno does. He throws for 1 million yards, one or two touchdowns, and one or two picks every game. But he's always slinging the ball around the yard. Um, and yeah, they really couldn't get a run game going. I think the Chargers, top to bottom, have a better team. I think the Chargers really have a legitimate chance to win the AFC West this year, and no one's really talking about it. And I'm not just saying that because they beat the Chiefs in week 1 on neutral ground, whatever. Yeah, they beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs were without, X, Y, Z people that we mentioned earlier, but I think the Chargers are a truly talented team. I do. They're able to establish the run. They're able to throw the ball around the yard, get the run, the pass building off the play action, because they're able to establish the run and really dominate at the line of scrimmage, top to bottom, great defense. Henley, Derwin James, they have absolute studs on the defensive side of the ball as well. Um, I think 3.5 is a little low, honestly. I think the Chargers win this. I think that they win it with ease. With that being said, thank you all for watching. We'll see how this shakes up. I will see everyone next week and enjoy another weekend of football.